requested something,
I
I
will.
understand.
What number
I know
Bliss
you
Road
have
is
to
this?
keep-
This is just Bliss.
It's just Bliss, I know it's just Bliss, it's
Oh.
Bliss every day here.
Oh, yeah.
But what number?
You are.
Have a
Okay, let's get started.
So, I'm ready to do this. No, I have a bird
Okay.
watcher.
Yeah.
Alrighty, everyone signed in, all set, ready to go?
There's a card.
Alrighty, now, the past few weeks, we've taught you how to find prospects by phone. And when you get the prospect by phone, we taught you how to not just run out there and go out on the appointment until you ask them a few questions first. Then I most recently, last week, shared with you the process that top producers use when they're on a listing appointment, right? And so today we're going to cover how to get the seller, how to qualify the seller for a decision. In terms of qualifying the seller for a decision, I'm going to provide you with a list of 12 questions today that will help you to pre-sell the seller, okay? You know, in order to increase your bottom line, you have to kind of meet us halfway. You know what I mean by that? Is that some agents come to the training classes like they do here, like you are here today, but yet they don't implement the things that they learned, right? Some agents are out there implementing things, but because they haven't come to the training class, they're implementing the wrong things, right? If you do both, if you meet yourself halfway, in other words, show up for the training sessions and implement the items, you are head and shoulders above everyone else. Here's something else. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, okay? But I'll share with you something extremely important. I can tell you every single week for as long as I've been in this business, I've heard real estate agents say, I couldn't go to training today because I had a showing. I had a home inspection, have a listing appointment, I have a reload. I have, what else do people have?
Dentist.
I have a dentist appointment. Here's another one that I love the best. I have phone duty, right? I want to share with you something, and I mean this from my heart of hearts. There is literally nothing that you can do in this business that's more important than being here on Fridays at 10 o'clock. Because you don't know what you're going to miss if you're not here. I know I'm preaching to the choir. But there's nothing more important than being here. Because everything else that you do, it's a maybe. With the information you're going to learn, it could drastically make a huge difference in the amount of money you're going to make on a yearly basis in the real estate industry. So I would highly encourage you to keep coming. Please don't miss a session. Tell other people that you care about in your office that they have to be here because it's that important. It's serious. It's serious. I want to tell you a story. It's about a woman by the name of Mary who desperately wanted to win the lottery. And so what she would do is every Friday night at 6 o'clock, she would listen to the radio and wait for her numbers to show up. And so she used to pray to God and say, God, please, just let me win once. Just once, let me win. And finally she got really desperate and she said, please God, if you just let me win one time, just one time, that would be so great. And all of a sudden, the heavens parted and this big bellowing voice came down from the sky. And it said, Mary, meet me halfway. Buy a ticket. Right? So, you know, the point is that if you want to really add to your bottom line, you've got to implement what it is that you learn, and most importantly, you have to learn what it is that you need to learn. But here's something else I've learned: you don't know what you don't know, right? And so when you miss a training class, or you're not at a session, or you don't catch it on DVD, you don't know what you missed. And you don't know that what you missed could have been the absolute key thing that you absolutely positively needed to learn in order to in an incredible way, massively change your career. You follow me? I used to go to training classes because I was afraid of what I was going to miss. I was afraid my competitors might get this information and I wouldn't. And that would really concern me. And more importantly, I didn't know what I didn't know. And there were times that I did go to a training class. Every time I went to any training class, I always learned something. I always learned one thing that would help me with my career in real estate. And I likened it to, you know, a lumberjack sharpening his axe, making sure that they're sharp, making sure that they're doing what they need to do in order to be incredibly successful. So, today I'm going to share with you the most powerful listing tool you could ever use. The most powerful listing tool you could ever use. And let me ask you a question. How would you like to sell the seller? Follow me on this. How would you like to sell the seller before it's even time to sell them on you? How would you like to be able to do that?
Absolutely. Yeah.
How would you like to sell the seller before it's time for you to sell them on you or your company and to get them to list with you? Wouldn't that be good?
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So, go to your, let's go to the first page. We'll talk about the questions. How to qualify the seller for a decision. Why should you qualify the seller before you look at the house? A, you can ask tougher questions.
That's the fifth one, you're going top to bottom?
Yes, I am. Yep. They expect it. Or C, it doesn't matter when you qualify the seller. The answer is actually A, yes. As you're gonna learn the reason for that in a few moments, yep, you'll see. Number 4, what type of questions, what type of questions are most effective for qualifying? A, open-ended questions, who, what, when, where, why. B, yes or no questions, or C, it doesn't matter.
A.
A is correct. You guys are good. Number 3, why should you ask sellers, who else are you talking with about the sale? A, you shouldn't ask that question. B, you're better off knowing who you're up against. Or C, so that you can talk the competition down.
Oh, C.
Yeah. Right, you got it.
B, correct?
B is correct. What is the best questioning style for qualifying? Conversational, businesslike, or formal? Conversational, absolutely. Number 1, take notes from what they tell you when qualifying because it keeps you on track, you won't forget anything important, it shows that you care, or all of the above. You got it, all of the above. You guys are good. Now, what did we learn last week? Everybody look up at me. You ready?
Yeah.
Now, we learned about LIST. LIST. Lead in, investigate, show and sell, and tie down. So the first thing you do is you,
Ring the bell.
then you,
Smile.
then you,
Make a compliment.
then you,
Bring them to the table.
then you,
Break the ice.
and then you
Safe island. Take them to a safe island.
take them out on a safe island. Absolutely. So those of you who have this photo right here,
Were you here for that last week? Wow.
It's all
I
here
wish I
for
hadn't
you.
missed that,
Okay.
okay.
It's all in picture format.
Smile.
So the process is to lead in, right? Lead in is ring the bell, smile, pay them a compliment, get them to think good about you, right? Take them to the kitchen table, that's when you start investigating, and then you and you break the ice, and then you get up and you show them around and you get up and you look at the property, and then you bring. I'm sorry, my voice is killing me today.
Yeah.
And show and sell and tie down. That's when you close to make a decision. We're gonna go through that in detail in a minute. And so we all know the process. That's the process, right? Go to the next page. After you take them out on a safe island, and for those of you who weren't here last week, the safe island technique is a technique that you tell them what's going to happen before it happens. Okay? And so after you take them out onto the safe island, you then get permission to ask them a bunch of questions, okay? Now, the safe island dialogue goes as follows. Before I begin, let me explain how I work. I'm not interested in taking a listing just for the sake of taking a listing. One of the things I learned in real estate school is that if you take a listing for the sake of taking a listing, it often leads to letting our clients down. I don't think that's what you want, is it? And you do one of these with your head, right? I don't think that's what you want, is it? No. So to prevent that from happening, there's a simple process I like to follow. May I share it with you now? And they say, yes, right. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna ask you a series of questions. Then I'm gonna ask you to show me around the house. We'll come back to the kitchen table, and I'll show you why so many people choose to do business with me and Carlson GMAC. Then we'll talk about the price, the terms, and I'll also share with you a net sheet to let you know exactly what you're gonna net in your pocket after the sale of the property. Assuming we are in agreement, then we can make a decision whether or not we should work together. Does that make sense? This is my process for working in it, and that prevents us from making a mistake that we might regret. Does that make sense to you? And the sellers always say yes. It does. It makes sense to me. Now, if you're going to put a listing packet together, as Lauren and Bill and I did earlier in the week, I would recommend that you have just a single piece of paper with these 5 things on them, and that's the first page of your listing appointment. And that way it reminds you of what to do and how to go through the process with them, and it keeps you on what?
Right.
Keeps you on track. You got it. Next item down, the seller questions are designed to blank the seller so you won't have to. Sell. Deborah got it, right? The seller questions I'm going to share with you are designed to sell the seller so you don't have to. There are only 2 types of questions, gang. There are WOPEN questions, W-O-P-E-N, and then there are yes-no questions. WOPEN and yes-no questions. Now, has anyone, I know that a couple people here have taken the Floyd Wickman course before. Raise your hands if you've taken that course, right? Mark, you have. It's otherwise was known as Sweat Hogs back years ago. It was kind of an odd name, but back then it had some significance for some folks. Do you remember that show? Welcome Back, Kotter. And well, one time Floyd was teaching a class, and the students in the class said, you know, you're like Mr. Kotter. And he said, well, if I'm Mr. Kotter, then you guys are the Sweat Hogs. And he created the program, and he called it the Sweat Hogs course. And very, very famous course for people who've been in the business for a long time. They've now changed it to the Floyd Wickman course is the name of it, because some people were like, what a horrible name. And even Floyd was thinking, that's just a horrible name. So they got rid of the name, but it is absolutely positively the most results-getting course anyone could ever take in the real estate industry. If you ever have an opportunity to take that course, please do it. It would make a massive difference in your career.
Oh, that guy over there said that his program is for this.
His coaching program. That's different than the Floyd Wickman course.
Yeah.
It's a little different. It's a little different, yeah. But when you take the Floyd Wickman course, you receive a series of questions to give every seller. Now, the Floyd Wickman courses is actually coming out with a new training tool, and it ought to be out sometime in I think it was July. July, they said it's coming out. And it's a tool that you could use on your listing appointments. It's a box, looks like this. Comes in company colors. Comes in your company colors if you'd like. And it's available for $49.95. And what it is, it's a box, and God bless you.
Thank you.
And it has a little window in it like this. And it has numbers from 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and there's a little needle in it like this here, okay? Inside this box. And there's a little strap that goes around it like what a night watchman wears, you know? That goes so you can put it over your shoulder. And what this is, it's called a guts gauge, okay? A guts gauge. No. I got you, didn't I? Okay. But Lauren, thank you for getting me sometimes. All the time, actually. So on the guts gauge, what this does is this will, as you're asking the questions, it will determine just how gutsy that question was in order for you to ask. How many guts you had to use how much of your guts did you have to use to ask that question? You follow me? So, let me ask you a question. How would you, now 1 being very easy to ask and 5 being really gutsy, okay? How would you rate this question? Why are you moving? What would that be?
Whoa.
One, right? When do you want to move?
One.
About a one,
Yeah.
right? How long have you lived in your present home?
One.
One, right? What would it take for you to list with me today?
5.
Right? Right? Gutsy. The questions that I'm going to give you are progressively gutsier and gutsier and gutsier as we go down the list. And they're designed that way to help the seller feel comfortable with you. And you're also going to use this in a very conversational way so that you're selling the seller before you actually, so that you really, the questions will kind of sell you as you go through the process. So, Floyd gives you 12 questions. How many questions? 12. You got it. And they're designed to sell the seller so you won't have to. That's one of your blanks that you should have on your page, right? Nope, never mind. You don't have that on your page.
Yes.
What?
It's under the safe
What?
file
It's on the
catalog.
Open required.
Wopen require,
I'm on the page that says safe file and
which
dialogue.
require the seller to talk. That's correct, yes. I'm matching your notes up with mine now. Yes, that's correct.
Where are you?
This page.
Yeah.
One before that one. Yeah, there you go.
We're on the open.
John,
Yes.
am I missing something, Wopen, is that a typo, or are you really talking about something?
A wopen is an open question. Thank you for asking that, because I'm sure others were thinking the same thing. A wopen question is a fictitious name that we call an open question that begins with a W. So we just shorten it up and call it a wopen question. Now, there's a difference between the wopen and the yes/no questions. For instance, when you ask a wopen question, for instance, a seller can't say no. Like, feel this. Where are you moving to? No. See how that doesn't flow? Right? It gets the seller to talk. It makes it conversational. It makes the seller give you some additional information. You follow me? Too many people are asking yes/no questions. They'll ask questions like this. So you probably want to be moved in, I don't know, 6 months, right? And the seller says,
Yeah.
yes or no. It's not, you're not engaging the seller and you're not selling yourself in the process. So keep in mind, if you just want to use the wopen questions, it makes a huge difference. More importantly, I'm going to actually give you those questions today so you'll have them. Asking wopen questions puts you in control of any situation. I remember Floyd telling a story where he was managing a real estate office one time, and a gentleman was mad he didn't get his escrow money back, and he walked in with a gun.
Ooh.
He walked in with a gun and he's flailing it around saying he wanted his money back. Floyd took control of the situation. You know how he did it? With wopen questions.
What's the matter with you?
Yeah, what are you doing?
Why are you crazy?
Who are you? You know, what can we do to help you?
Married me. I love you.
You know, what can we do to get you to put that gun down, get it out of my
Yeah.
face? But it makes a huge difference. If you feel like you're getting out of control of a conversation, you can do this. Listen, there's a 7-year-old girl that lives in my house. She's a little cutie, and she is a master at this, like you would not believe. Okay, it's time to stop the video game. What time is it? What does that have to do with anything? And you know what's funny is she will engage her mom and I in a conversation every single time. It's time to go to bed. Geez, I think I went to bed a little later last week. Oh, what do I have for lunch tomorrow at school? And, you know, I think I'm a little hungry now. Wouldn't it be good if we all had a snack before we go to bed? You know, it just shouldn't go on and on and on and on. And it just kind of flows, you know. And she's starting to learn how to be in control. And the control is that she gets to stay up another 5 minutes by asking more questions, right? So it works. It's amazing what you can learn from children.
You know where she got her jeans.
Right. All right, I talked about the open yes, no. The seller questions are all what type? What type of questions are they? Wopen questions, right. They are progressively gutsier, and they're designed to get the seller to talk. when we go through these questions, I want you to see how I'm selling as I'm asking the questions, okay? So I'm gonna go through these and walk through them with you. Now, let's go to the seller questions, if you would please, on your next page. And the first question is, why are you moving? Why are you moving? And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to actually give you all the questions, you write them all down, and then we're going to review them, okay? So I'm going to give them all to you first, and then we'll review them. Number 2, when do you want to move? You got it. When do you want to move? When do you want to move? Number 3 is, how long have you lived here? How long have you lived here? What did you pay for it? Number 4 is, what major improvements have you made? Number 5 is, who else are you talking with? And number 6, Lauren and Bill, I changed this question on you. So the one that I gave you earlier in the week, this is a little different. I think you'll like this one better. Number 6, if you could not get all the equity out of your house, would you still move?
That's a good one.
If you could not get all the equity out of your house, would you still move? I think what we had before is, do you have any additional funds available, was the other question.
You could not get all equity?
Out of your house, would you
Yep,
still
if you
move?
could not get all the equity out of your house, would you still move?
And they said, how do you mean?
What do you
Right.
mean?
I like that.
They
That's
might-
what you would say,
They might
right.
say, what does that mean, equity?
Yeah,
You
sure,
know?
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, they'll have questions for you, and that's when it becomes more conversational. Number 7, how do you feel about owner financing? Number 7 is, how do you feel about owner financing?
No way.
Number 8, how did you arrive at your price? And keep in mind, we asked them in our appointment pre-qualifying questions, before we went out on the appointment, we asked them what they thought the price of their home was worth. Remember that?
You were to ask that before, yeah?
Yep.
Remember
It's
that.
in the-
Pre-qualifying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's in the list of the 7 questions I gave you earlier in an earlier
Did you
class.
arrive at your price?
Well, we're gonna ask that question now, but on the phone, before we get to the appointment, we're asking them, how much do you feel your home is worth? And if they say, well, you tell me, and then you say, well,
Yeah.
how much have homes sold for in your neighborhood that are similar to yours?
They say, you tell me.
They give you a price.
That's why we're calling you.
Believe me, they know, they'll tell you. What are your major concerns in making a move? Number 9, what are your major concerns in making a move? I know sometimes we get caught up on what they could say, but I've had a lot of experience firsthand of what they actually do say. For the majority, there are always exceptions, of course, there are always exceptions. What are your major concerns in making? Number 10, what is the most important to you? What is the most important to you?
In terms of their major concerns, you mean? Out of the major concerns?
No.
No?
I'm gonna give you the
Oh, okay.
perfect, you're right on track there. What is the most important to you? Pricing, timing, or convenience? What is the most important to you? Pricing, timing, or convenience? You know what, gang? It's always one of those 3,
Pricing, timing,
Convenience.
or convenience.
I thought you meant what is more important to you, that she saves my dog?
Could be, yeah, absolutely. Right. Number 11, remember, progressively gutsier, right? We're on number 11 now. Number 11, What would it do to your plans if you couldn't sell? What would it do to your plans if you couldn't sell?
Stay here.
What would, number
I
12,
die, I just,
Knock my husband off and collect the insurance.
number 12, what would it take for you to get, what would it take to get you to list with me today? Number 12, what would it take to get you to list with me today? I'm going to share with you something extremely important. Numbers 1 through 11 don't mean anything. The only question that means anything is number 12. That's the only one that you really need and or want or to know the answer for. And 1 to 11 is just cushioning number 12. It's slowly, progressively getting gutsier as you go through the questions. Now, here's how you ask the questions, okay? And Deborah, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you to role play with me. You're going to be a seller with some real concerns. We're going to use somewhat of a positive role play, but realistic role play manner. Deborah and I did not have an opportunity to rehearse this, so I may interject a couple of things, but I'm going to share with you. I'm going to pretend that I'm at the table with Deborah and her husband, and we're having a conversation. And here's what I do when I first get to Deborah's house. I
Ring the bell.
smile,
Pay the
fair
compliment.
take it to the table, break the ice.
Take the.
Come on, everybody.
Oh, go, you go.
Take them on and say that. Ask them a bunch of
Questions.
what kind of questions?
Open.
Open questions, right? And so when we get to the table, I go through my Safe Island dialogue and I show them, here's how we don't make a mistake that we're both going to regret. And we have a simple process, and I learned in real estate school that if we follow this process, it will lead to not letting you down, and I'm sure you don't want to be let down, is that correct? And they say yes. I said, well, I have this process, I'd like to share it with you now, is that okay? And they say yes, and I say, okay, number one, what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions, right? And then number two, I'm going to,
Have you show me around?
have you show me around the house. And number three, we're gonna go back to the table, and that's when you're going to give your presentation. I'm gonna show you why so many buyers and so many sellers choose me and my company to list and market your home. Then we're going to talk about price and terms and net, what you're going to actually net in your pocket. And then number five, we should both have enough information in order to make a decision as to whether or not we should work together. Does that make sense? Right? So, and then I say, this is the process that prevents us from making a mistake. Does that make sense to you, Deborah? And she says, yeah, makes sense. Who's in control of the listing appointment right now?
You.
Remember this, I said this last week. Someone is going to be in control of that listing appointment. It's either going to be you or
Yeah.
this puts you in control right away, doesn't it, gang? Because you're telling them how you're going to work and what you're going to do, what their role is and what your role is, okay? So then we get into the questions. And remember what I said earlier, you want to use these questions in such a way where, you're selling in a conversational way. So, the first question I would ask Deborah is now I want you just to kind of feel this and listen to me as I go through this dialogue. I would actually have my questions in front of me on a piece of paper, and I would have my what in my hand? A pen in my hand, and I would be taking notes, right? As Deborah is talking to me, I'm taking notes, all right? So I'd ask the question, well, Deborah, thanks for having me over, appreciate it. And before we get started, sometimes my mouth gets a little dry from talking. Could I get a glass of water, please?
Absolutely.
She gets me a glass of
Would you
water.
like lemon with that?
That'd be great.
Okay,
thanks.
sure, no
That's great.
problem.
Like a little scotch?
Yeah, right. That's after. Okay, Deborah, probably the most important question I'd like to ask, and the thing that really matters the most is, why are you moving?
And my statements in this role playing do not necessarily reflect my opinion.
Okay,
plenty,
good,
right?
right, all right, great.
Well, my neighborhood has changed so drastically since I bought this place. I mean, it used to be predominantly single-family, and now we've got multi-family people moving in, and the projects are practically next door, and we've got more traffic than we've ever seen, so we want out of here.
Okay, so it sounds like that I've gotta get you moved out of here to help save your sanity, am I right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Now, do you see what Deborah did with her head after I said that question?
Yes.
That question's not in your dialogue. But I'm making it conversational and I'm selling, and I put me in the role of being the person who's selling her house. And she said absolutely. Did you follow that? You see how smooth that flowed? You know the reason why 70% of the people fail out of this business is they don't know the questions to ask. They don't have the guts to ask them, and they don't have the skill to ask the questions in a conversational way.
And you reflected back to me what I had just said, which people love when you do that,
Yeah,
right?
it shows that you really care,
Listened.
and you're listening, and I'm making notes.
And not
Right.
only that, it also
Yes.
gives her the opportunity to say, no, that's not what I meant, okay?
Absolutely.
You know, because you might have heard it, and you might not have, you know, so it sounds like you're losing your sanity. No, I'm not losing my sanity, but this is what's really, you know, so
Sure.
clarity.
Right.
And then I would say, oh, that's why, okay, then I'd write that down, right, to find out for sure. And then I would say, and then some questions lead to other questions, and I would say, I'm still on number one now, I'd say, well, moreover, where are you moving to?
I would like to move to the lake area.
Okay,
Of
great,
town.
to the lake area.
Yeah,
Do you have,
I'm making that up.
do you like boating and things of that nature, is that what you like?
Well,
to
it just
do?
seems like the values seem to stay, you know, pretty steady in that area of
Okay,
town.
great. So you wanna be in an area where the values are pretty steady, then, is that what I hear you saying?
Right, right.
Great, okay, good. So you're probably gonna need some help in having me help you find that house, am I right?
Geez, I really hadn't thought much about that yet.
Well, we can talk about that later, of course, but the first thing is, we wanna talk about getting you the most amount of money for your house, am I right?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. So, number two is, that I have on my form here, Deborah, is, when do you want to move?
Well, I've heard that having my house on the market is just gonna be horrible, so I think once we get that started, it'd be as, you know, as quick as possible. I don't wanna have my house on the market for a long time.
Okay, so you had mentioned about moving, when, in terms of a time frame, when do you have to move? Or when would you like to move?
We really don't have to sell this house.
Okay,
You know,
why am I here?
we've all heard that remark though before,
Sure.
you know, if I don't get the money I want, we don't have to sell the house, but, you know, ASAP, as soon as
ASAP.
possible.
Okay, in terms
I
of,
don't have any restrictions
in
as far as
terms
that's
of months,
concerned.
what would be your preference? How many months?
Up to 3,
3 months?
Yeah.
Wow,
yeah,
looking at the market, I'm already way behind schedule, aren't I?
yeah.
Now, do you wanna be sold in 3 months, or do you wanna be under agreement in 3 months?
I'd like to be moved within 3 months.
Like to be moved in 3 months, so I have 30 days to get your home listed and sold. And the
Right,
average days on market right now are close to 180,
boy,
so
you've got your job cut
I've
out
got
for
my
you,
job
don't
cut
you?
out for me. But I'm up to the challenge, I'll do what I can to help you get to where you need to go.
All right, cause I'm thinking a 30-day listing period is pretty much where I'm at. I don't think I wanna do any more than 30-day contracts.
Yeah, no problem, and we can talk about that later,
Okay.
you know? The first thing we have, no, listen to me guys, listen, no problem, we can talk about that later.
You talked about it all.
Let's go through these details right now first.
Okay,
You see, what happens is, I put the objection aside.
yeah.
See, most people would say, I don't, I don't think so, 30-day listings, there's no way I'm gonna be able to do that. Listen, if we don't even make a decision for me to list the property or for them to put it on the market at this point, then what's the point of getting into, handling an objection that isn't even a real objection? I mean, right now, in my mind, that's not even a real objection, because I know in my mind and in my heart that the seller really doesn't understand what it takes to get a property sold, and that 30 days isn't enough time, but I need to educate the seller and explain that to them. There is a whole entire separate session that we're going to have, and it's titled, How to Get a Full-Term Listing. Okay, so I'm gonna teach you the skill of not only just handling that objection, but getting a full-term listing, which is, in this market, how long?
6 months.
year.
Yeah.
A year.
6 months, right? The last time I looked at Hampton County, Trend Graphics, there was 13.5 months of inventory in the market. So 30, 90-day listings, gang, out the window. Really bad. there's one way to ensure yourself of not making a commission is taking a 90-day listing. Not in this market. It's not gonna fly. Now follow this. I really wanna ask Deborah how much she paid for the house, but I'm not gonna ask her that. Now feel how this flows. You ready? So Deborah, how long have you lived here?
6 years.
How much did you pay for it?
Oh, we paid, let me think, I think we paid about 180,000 for the house back 6
Okay.
years ago.
Great.
It's at the kind of the height of the market though, you know.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. But you see how I wanted to ask the second question, but I asked the first one in order to ask the second one. You see how that kind of flows? So I cushioned it with how long have you lived here. The real thing that I want to know is how much you paid for it to see what I'm up against as I continue forward in my presentation. Now, this is a good question. What major improvements have you made? And what I mean by major improvements, things that would add, real value to the property, like adding on additional square footage, or any major upgrades and things of that nature. So, what type of improvements have you made?
We put a roof on and replaced the windows.
Okay, so those aren't just, so that unfortunately those wouldn't be considered major because you'd have an added square footage to the property or.
Now, is this part of the conversation that you're having with the
Yes.
seller at this point?
Yeah. See, what I'm trying to explain to Deborah is that, a roof is a roof. It sheds water. Windows, you can see out the window. Just because it's new doesn't mean that it increases the value of the house to the point where they're going to get every nickel back. That's a fact, right?
But it
But
does,
it
improve,
does,
it
a
does
roof
around
and
here.
It's an
Window
interesting
does
point,
better.
because sellers do
Time
expect to
out.
get that kind of money back.
They
That's
do.
the first thing we
When
wanna
an appraiser appraises the value of the property, does he give is there a section to make adjustments for windows and roofs? No. It's either good, average, or poor, right? That they have adjustments on. But what do they make adjustments for? See, you have to explain this to the seller,
Yeah.
that the appraiser is what we have to satisfy. The appraisal is what we have to satisfy. See, we could find a buyer that says, wow, new roof, new windows, I'm gonna pay an additional $25,000 for this property.
No.
But what if homes with average windows and average roofs are selling for $25,000 less? The value isn't there. In other words, they're not going to be able to get the home sold. The appraiser will not appraise, and therefore the buyer won't be able to buy the home, and the seller won't be able to sell the home for the price that they want to. So the backup question is, what would happen if you couldn't get every nickel back out of the property that you put into it? How would you feel about that?
We wouldn't be able to sell. We wouldn't go to the closing, well, this would be a realtor speak. I was gonna say, we
Yeah.
wouldn't go to the closing table with cash. But yeah, I mean, if we couldn't pay off what we have for a mortgage, we just wouldn't be able to sell.
Okay, so that's a different topic, right? I mean, they have to pay off their mortgage, right? And we haven't determined whether or not we can do that yet. We're going to. I haven't even got up off the kitchen table and taken a look at the house yet at this point, right? We'll determine that.
Would it be important to ask a question, what major improvements have you made and what did they cost? Is
No,
that
because
relevant to know?
I don't really care what they cost. I mean, they can talk to me about them if they want, and I'll write it down. But the bottom line is, it's not going to change my market analysis.
Unless it's like they added a 2-car garage or
Exactly.
something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So major improvements you're saying would be something that adds square footage, more living area?
Yes.
And how about updating bathrooms, kitchens?
Sure. Yeah.
All right.
Well, updating, yes, but they wouldn't get all the money back necessarily. And
Right.
sometimes, and when we looked at a house yesterday on tour, this house was so personalized and everything was updated that, you know what? I mean, and they spent a lot of money
never gonna get
on
it
this
back.
property. They won't get that back, unfortunately. And, some people walk in and say it's gorgeous. Some people walk in and say, oh, that's horrible.
Where?
So, yes.
On a lot of the home shows,
Bless you.
Bless.
as they're walking around with the realtor says, if you update this room,
Yes.
$10,000, you'll get $15,000 back.
Yes.
Everything I read and see says you're gonna get less than what you put into it.
Right.
Now, people that watch these shows are gonna think that they're gonna be getting more, and how do you handle that?
Well, you have to educate them on it, and a lot of these shows, what they're doing is they are buying a property for less than fair market value.
No, this is,
Oh, the
they're talking to the sellers.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
If I'm talking to a seller, in other words, the property is, let's say, if I'm in a situation where I'm going to get that money back, in other words, the value of the property has to be there in order to do it. Because in some of those shows, they will show you where somebody over-improved the property and they didn't get all their money back. And so that happens as well, but they're probably not as publicized as these. And the reality, what you have to do is, there's TV and then there's reality.
Right.
The reality is that we need to impress the appraiser. If you're not adding on square footage, you're not increasing the value of the property. A roof, a new heating system, new windows, all you're doing is, I love this term, you're keeping the property up to standard. Learn this dialogue, folks, it's very important. All you're doing is you're bringing the property up to standard. Now, will your home sell faster than a house that doesn't have the improvements? Absolutely. But a roof is a roof, it sheds water. Let me ask you a question, this is a very powerful question. You could use this on your listing appointments. Let's say there were two homes, new construction, they were built side by side, and they both had to have wells drilled. The first well only cost $10,000 to drill, and they were able to get water. The second house cost $50,000, they had to drill extra deep through granite and stones and everything to get water. And when they finally found it, the water, it was contaminated, so they had to put an expensive filtration system to it. They ended up spending $60,000 to get water in one house and $10,000 to get water in the other house. The builder sells both houses. Guess what they sell for? Same price. It doesn't matter that it costs more to get water. The bottom line is, it's water. It doesn't matter that you put architectural shingles versus regular shingles. They cost more. In either case, they both shed water. You follow me? And so, will it sell the house back? See, the problem is that you're expecting that every buyer will appreciate the quality that you put into it. And in some cases, they really don't care. I sold a house once, had a finished basement, and the seller thought this was a great feature for the property. The buyers came in and tore it out completely, ripped it all out, and made a woodwork shop out of that space. I've had people who spent $30,000, $40,000 on built-in pools and patios, only to have a backhoe come in and fill it up with dirt and rocks so that they could have a flat, level yard in there. They didn't want the pool. 2-year-old pool. You know what I mean? So the value is not always there for every buyer who buys a property. Yes?
Can I ask you a question about a basement? It was just brought to my attention a couple of days ago that an appraiser cannot use a finished basement as part of their appraisal process.
They cannot use it as square footage of livable space, unless there are 3 sides of the lower level that have full-size windows in the basement, which is extremely rare. You basically have to have the land in the front go, walk out on the back,
3 sides.
and then the other 2 sides would have to have full windows. Then potentially they could use that as living area.
I thought that the criteria was that if you had a walkout basement, if it walked out onto level.
Nope,
That's
not
it,
necessarily.
Not necessarily.
No, because
Is
it's
it
not
three
enough, you don't have
sides?
enough, yeah, you need the sides too.
They
So,
can only include it if it has windows on 3 sides, and then they can include it as square footage.
And it has to be walkout, and then they could potentially include the square footage as the living space in the house. Then, of course, it would be basically a house without a basement, so kind of like a raised ranch, if you would think of that, or a split level home if it's finished in the lower level, and usually have a garage on the side and windows on all 3 sides, or, walkout in the back, and, things of that nature, so.
So you can't use it as living space, but I think on the appraiser's sheet, I think there's a space that says that you can check, that the appraiser checks finished basement or not finished basement.
Well, that's what I
And
thought.
they
I'm going
do
through
it.
this with an
But
appraisal right now.
when they do that, literally, gang, people are spending, oh gosh, what's it cost to finish a basement?
No, it could be anything.
Anything,
Could be
30,000,
anything.
40,000.
Could be 5,000, could be 40,000, right?
Depends what
The appraiser's never going to give $40,000 of value, maybe 3, I'm guessing, anybody else have any experience with that? Maybe 2,000, maybe nothing, it's not living space, it's, I used to tell people, You know, they wanted to get more money for their home, so they figured they'd finish their basement. I said, listen, putting money in the basement is like putting money in the hole. And it never comes back out again, right? If you're going to finish the basement, do it for your own personal family enjoyment, right? And don't put a lot of money into it. If you plan on selling sometime soon.
I did have
Don't-
somebody ask me
don't
that,
go
should I put a
crazy.
2-car garage on or finish the basement?
Great question.
Yep, absolutely, put the 2-car garage on.
Absolutely,
Well,
right?
they
They
know.
could spend the same amount of money in either one, right?
Yeah,
So adding that space, great questions.
I'm questioning the, new windows. We have some areas, let's say in Long Meadow, old areas.
Yes.
So they have windows of 1920,
Yes.
double onion, blah, 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 with the cords
Yeah.
and everything. Then somebody will replace all new windows. It certainly is a big selling point when somebody
Absolutely.
is coming down that street and they go like, oh, that's wonderful, because otherwise we would have to do
Yes.
it, everybody would have to do it.
To certain buyers, you're absolutely right, it is. When I bought my first home, it had the old double hung windows, we could care less. We looked at all the houses, and that was the best house out of all of them. We bought that house, it had the old windows, it had a roof where, you know the little granular sections of the roof, that put in the coloring on it, it was worn off in about a third of the roof, right down to the felt part of the roof. That's how bad the roof was. And we bought the house. It was the best home in the price range. And we had the old windows and the roof that was falling apart, and I bought it. I fixed it up while I lived there. I paid $119,000 for the property. I put $17,000 into it while I lived there, and I sold it for $107,000. But I bought a $250,000 house for $175,000 because I was moving up in a down market. You follow me? And so when that house that I moved out of, that I sold for $107,000, that house later sold for $150,000, and I was like, oh, I was kicking myself. But the house I moved into for $175,000 also appreciated the same percentage, and there was a greater net gain on my return. So one of the things you always want to mention to your sellers is that there's a huge advantage in moving up in a down market. Because when the value goes up 10%, 10% of $200,000 is a lot more than 10% of $100,000. In fact, that's a $10,000 net equity gain just by living in a home that is worth more money. You haven't done anything different, right? So that's a great item to mention. Now, going to number 5, I would ask this question. Deborah, who else are you talking with about selling your home?
well, we haven't interviewed anybody else yet, but after you leave, we've got a couple of other realtors local coming.
Okay, great. Now, some of you are looking at me saying, John, are you crazy to even bring that up? But here's the bottom line, gang. Whether I bring it up or not, those other realtors are still coming in. And am I better off knowing now, or when they call me later and say, yeah, we didn't list with you? We picked another agent. When am I better off knowing? Now, right? Absolutely.
You can feel bad longer.
Yeah, right.
Well, they may say they're talking with bankers or lawyers or.
Here are some questions I'm gonna ask Deborah. I made a note of them last night, and we were role-playing, Bill and Lauren and myself, we were role-playing in one of the training rooms last week, and I call it the unofficial listing appointment. And I was the agent, and they were talking about listing the property. And we have this on DVD, we recorded, so if anyone's interested in reading it. But I kinda went off the cuff here, and I made some notes on some of the things that I said. And it was, Deborah, what is it that you're going to compare when you're talking to different agents?
What you're gonna do to get the house sold and what you think it's worth.
Okay, great. So I noticed you keyed in on something very important, is what we're gonna do to get the home sold. So if I can prove to you beyond a shadow of a doubt that what I'm going to do, you could interview 100 companies, and no one's gonna do more to get your house marketed than I am. If I could prove that to you beyond a shadow of a doubt, would you give me the listing?
I would if we agreed on the price.
Me too, absolutely. We have to agree on price, but if we could agree on price, would I get the listing?
Yes, you would.
If I could do that, great.
Yes, you would, John.
Awesome.
John,
All right.
what was the, I'm sorry, what did you just ask me to begin that? I forgot.
What are you going to compare?
Yeah, what is it that you're going to compare? What is it that you're going to compare? And sometimes they say the best price, but then you have to deal with the price objection. You need to explain to them that you never hire an agent based on price and price alone. You wanna hire an agent based on their marketing plan or how they're gonna get the property sold. Because the more marketing an agent does, the more exposure your property gets. The more exposure your property gets, the more prospects are interested in the property. The more prospects that are interested in the property, the more value the property is going to have, the price is going to go what? In fact, if I get enough people liking and looking at your property, I could even potentially create an auction-like atmosphere, and then what do you think will happen with the price?
Bidding war.
Absolutely. So this is why I want to get them thinking. So you see, it's not important about what you hire for the price. The house is worth what the house is worth, regardless. What my opinion is, my opinion doesn't matter. Your opinion, with all due respect ever, doesn't matter. What really matters is the opinion of the buyers out there in the marketplace. And the agent that you want to hire is the agent that is going to expose your property to the most amount of buyers so that we can find out what that real price really is. I can certainly give you a ballpark idea of what the value of the property is so you can make a decision whether you should list the property or not. And I'm going to give you an honest assessment. One of the things that we learned that also we learned in real estate school is that if we take a listing just because somebody wants to get a higher price and we list it at that higher price, I might end up having the listing for 6 months or a year and then not getting it sold and letting you down. There are two things that get a property sold: price and promotion. I remember them because they both begin with the letter P. You see, you need an agent who can do both things for you. But here's a really important point. I control the promotion, you control the price. So I'm going to show you everything that I'm going to do to promote your property. But you still have to price it right so that my promotion actually works and will attract a buyer. You see, all the promotion in the world, Dave, all the promotion in the world will never sell an overpriced listing. You could do radio ads, television ads, internet ads, paper ads, right? Nothing, there's nothing you can do to sell an overpriced listing. On the other hand, if you price it right and no one knows about it, what will happen? So, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we have to do both. You follow me? Does that make sense?
Good stuff, that was good.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Yeah. All right, I just want to review. I basically had mentioned everything that I wanted to say about that, about in terms of who you're talking. Yes.
Staying with who you're talking to, she said, like she said in her answer, well, I've got representatives from a couple other agencies coming over. Do you then follow it up and press to find out who, what agencies, or is it just enough to know I got a couple of other people coming?
Yeah, absolutely. You can definitely press on and say, you know, who is it that's, well, see, what's going to happen is right now while I'm asking the questions, I know I have competition. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, no problem, stay on track. The track is, by the time I get done answering these questions, look at the house, come back at the kitchen table, show her all the reasons why, and then I'm going to tie down, I'm going to close. She might forget that what happens in many cases is that they don't even, it's not an objection anymore. See, she's giving me objections now because she doesn't know me, like me, or trust me yet. She doesn't know me yet. But after she gets to know me and like me and trust me and see all the marketing that I'm going to do, she might look at her husband and say, you know what, honey, let's just cancel those other appointments. It's obvious this guy knows what he's doing. Or
Or
this
you
lady knows
could
what she's
say,
doing.
you could call the agent for them.
Yeah,
Ooh.
and that's another, but see what Esther is talking about is, we talked about earlier, is that this is handling the objection. Let's say I go to close, right, and we talked about this before. Let's say I go to close, and Deborah says, you know what, John, I love everything you're doing, everything looks great, you certainly have impressed us, but we really did make a commitment to these other people that we would let them come in and show them what they're doing. So remember what I said earlier about closing, is that you either get a yes, get a no, or get an appointment. Get a yes, get a no, or an appointment. And here's what I'd say to Deborah. I said, Deborah, if you say yes to listing my property with me tonight, that'd be great. If you say no, that's totally fine as well. But a maybes just kill me. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to ask you a question. If I could prove to you beyond a shadow of a doubt that my company and me, if we're better at getting your property sold for the most amount of money than those other two companies that you mentioned, would you list with me?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I guess
because
I would.
she just said that, you know, she's gonna list with, and now you mentioned earlier too that you would list with the company that has the most marketing services, correct?
Yeah.
And so, and if we could agree on price, you would definitely list with the company that provides the most marketing services.
Right.
So here I have, now you pull out an objection handling tool, which is called your comparison flowchart. The comparison flowchart is something you prepare before you get to any of the listing appointments, and you have it with you in your listing presentation book at all times, but you only pull it out and use it when and if you need it. And the comparison flowchart has a list of all your marketing services on the left. Then it has 3 or 4 columns. The first column is your company, and there's a check mark next to every one of those services that you've performed. In the next company over, there's a check mark to all the things that they do. Next company over, check mark on everything that they do. Next company, check mark. So I took our company and the next top 3 companies in my marketplace, and I put them up here. And I listed all the things they do compared to what we do. Who has the most checks, gang?
Carlson.
We do.
What if you don't have the most checks? What do you have to do?
Check
Lie.
Check them.
Some more. Make some more checks.
Get a new list, right? Right. So what you do is you go through and you say to the seller, as you can see, my company has more services to get a buyer for your property than any of these other 3 companies. Now, you mentioned one other company, and that company's not on the list, and I didn't put them on here because they're not even in the top 3. You
I
follow me?
hate to tell you.
Yeah, so you don't have to go back to your office and make a whole new list, just say, look, unfortunately, they're not even in the top 3 in terms of production, so they didn't even make the list.
Is there really a way to find out what they do?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah.
How do you
Well,
do that?
here, let me
Over
give you
their
an
materials?
example, let me give you an example of this, for instance, I know that a lot of you aren't familiar with home rewards, I've learned that. But like Esther, you're familiar with home rewards.
Now I am.
If you have home rewards on your list of one of the things that you do, no one else is doing that. You follow me? So let's say you have another company that's doing everything that you can do except for home rewards. You have 35 items, they have 34. Who has more items? You do, right? I mean, and here's the close after using this. You simply say to the seller, which one of these items, if you had to pick one, which one of these items do you think is going to get your home sold? Which one item? Do you know? You don't know. I don't know which one either. So why leave a stone unturned? Like, why don't you hire a company that does everything that way? Like, I'll give you an example. If there was I use home warranties. If a buyer was interested in your property because it had a home warranty on it, because they knew that their budget was going to be protected after they bought your home, and another agent didn't use that tool, but that was the tool that got the buyer to give them enough confidence to buy your property, and they didn't use it, then your home may never sell. So why would you have a list with a company that didn't offer that as a marketing tool? We do. You follow me, how that would work? And listen, why don't I do this? I don't mind. I'd like you to list with me tonight. And I know that you have made an obligation and a promise to this other agent that you list them. Here's what I'll do in return. If you list with me tonight, I will call those agents after I get the property in the multiple listing service, and they'll be the first ones to know that the property is available. I'll tell them that I really twisted your arm and I closed you really hard and I, got you to list with me, and that, they'll get the next one. And if they have a buyer for the property, they can certainly come in and show it right away. Because here's the reality of it, gang. You know what? The bottom line is, I've said that once to a seller, and they said, "Oh, John, don't worry, I'll call them. I'll call them myself personally and tell them that I've already listed." Okay. And so the fact that you're offering to do it doesn't even always mean that you're going to do it. It's kind of like one of my friends. He always goes for his wallet at dinner, but he never actually pulls the credit card out of the wallet and says, "Yeah, I'll pay," right? Some of you have friends like that. Some of you are smart.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's go on to the next item. If you could not get all the equity out of your house, would you still move?
Oh, geez, I don't know. I guess it would depend on how big of a gap there was.
Okay, so let's say if Deborah said no, if I can't get all the equity out of my house, I wouldn't move, because we were talking about that earlier.
Yeah.
You know, if I can't get enough money, then I'm not going to move. And then I would say, so my job really, then what you're telling me is I need to maximize the amount of equity that we get out of this property when I listed it, am I right?
Right.
See what she said? She said, right. And what did I say? I said about me listing the property, getting her the most amount of equity out of the property, right? I have to maximize that.
I
You
guess
see-
I'm not sure, can I just ask this
Sure,
question, because it's a
yeah.
great question to ask a seller, but I'm a little confused, because that doesn't then necessarily mean what they owe. It just means what they've put into it, will they get that back? Is that where you're going with that question?
Yeah, in other words, well, the problem is they don't even know what their equity is yet.
Right,
You know what I mean? This is all me. You see, the purpose of these questions, these 11 questions, is to sell them on me. Because what I'm doing subconsciously, and you say subliminally, or whatever you want, I can't even say it because my nose is stuffy. Subliminally, is I'm getting a lot of what from the seller?
Yes.
A lot of these, right? I'm getting a lot of these from the seller. And I'm using me a lot. You follow me? Right? I'm using me a lot in there. And so what I'm doing is I'm selling the seller. I'm pre-selling before I even have to ask them to list with me. They're already wanting to list with me. Number 7, how do you feel about owner financing?
I don't think I'd be interested in that.
Okay. How do you mean?
Well, because I want all the money so that I can, right away, so that I can, pay off my debt. I don't wanna hold
So
paper.
you want all your cash out, so I'll make sure that all right, okay, no problem. You need all your cash out, right?
Right,
Okay, I'll write that down. Now, sometimes they'll say, well, what do you mean? What does that mean, seller financing, and what would happen if I did that? And I say, well, I wanna ask you a question, do you need all your cash out, or would you prefer monthly payments? There are some tax advantages and disadvantages to taking all your money out now. You might have to pay taxes on that, depending on whether you've been able to use, your
I have a property.
capital.
capital gains
Mm.
taxes and all this other good stuff, depending on where they're at financially.
Well, if I don't cash out, do I still have to pay you? I mean, how do I pay you if I don't cash out?
Well, we'll get to that, actually. I prepared a net sheet that shows you what you would potentially end up with a net in your pocket. And by the way, gang, sometimes what they net in their pocket is a negative number.
Yeah.
And so after I show her the net sheet, I'm gonna jump ahead here for a minute, a few seminars, and after I show her the net sheet, I'm going to say to her, based on what you see here in this range, your property's gonna sell anywhere from 300 to 320. So you're gonna net in your pocket either a negative 5,000 or negative 10,000. Is this a number you can live with? And they're going to say either yes or no, right? And if they say no, then I'm gonna say, thanks, have a great day,
Right.
we'll see you later.
Is that a negative number compared to what they owe the bank? Is that what you're
Correct,
Okay.
and me.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
So they can't afford to pay me or the bank. Now, we might be able to talk about a potential short sale if they're in financial trouble, but not everybody is, right? I read an article recently that only 1% of all the houses in the country are actually in foreclosure. But you're hearing all these articles and all these phenomenal statistics.
That was a
Over
great article.
30, yeah, over
I sent that to everybody I know. I
over
really did.
over 30% of the homes in the United States are owned free and clear, right?
Over
So,
what, 30%?
Over 30% of the homes in the country are owned free and clear. There's no debt on them at all.
Oh.
So it's interesting. Now, and so what I would do is I talk about owner financing and maybe the benefits of owner financing. I sold my father-in-law's house years ago, and he did a combination of bank and owner financing, and the bank was okay with it. It was all above board, everything was good. But without him doing that, the buyer couldn't qualify to pay him the price that he wanted. The house sold for $115,000. It was a really nice Cape house, and either the seller had to reduce the price to get it sold, or he had to. So what he did is he financed $5,000 to the buyer, and the bank was okay with it, and they knew about it, and it was fine. And it got him his 115. Otherwise, he would have had to have taken 110 because the lender was only going to lend this particular borrower 110. okay?
That's interesting.
It's not that the property didn't appraise, it's just that they didn't qualify for more, and because of the terms that were agreed on with the seller, the bank was okay with it. So, you know, when somebody says, oh, no, I would never do owner financing, never say never, you never know, you never know. What if I were to give, if you didn't need your cash out and I were to give you, and let's say you right now, your money's earning, you know, 1 or 2 or 3% interest in your checking account, but I was gonna pay you 10% interest on your money. You know, it's kind of like, oh, now you've piqued my interest, you know?
It's just risky though, cause you're in second position, I'm
Yeah.
sure, and
No, what if you're in first position?
the bank wouldn't allow that, would
How
they?
would the bank like?
You wouldn't have a bank. What bank?
Well, the bank
Oh,
that,
we
Oh,
did
yeah,
all the
yeah.
financing.
for the bigger part,
Yeah.
You finance
the
it.
actual financing, the bank financing.
Yeah, but there's two different scenarios, so you bring up an awesome point there. So, you know, let's say you have, you could be in second position, and what if the value goes down, then you're completely out, right?
Right.
But hopefully the values will go up, depends on how much of a risk, you have to weigh it all out. But sometimes, like for instance, I bought a property on Park Avenue in Worcester. And I bought it was a commercial property. And the seller wanted $25,000 down and wanted me to borrow the other $150,000 from the, no, from her. She didn't want if I went to the bank and took out $150,000 from the bank and gave it to her, she would have had a massive tax penalty.
Yep.
And she didn't want to deal with that at her age, she just didn't want that. So she would prefer to charge me 10% interest, and by the way, that was the average going rate for a commercial loan at that time. So it didn't matter to me whether I paid the 10% to her or the bank. And in fact, I didn't have to go through getting pre-qualified, it didn't end up on my credit report. I mean, it was just as a debt on my credit report, it wasn't there. And I was just able to pay her monthly payments.
Wow, that's great.
So I paid her $1,900 a month, and that was it. And it was a 10-year loan. I had paid off in 10 years, and it was, so that's how it works. So there are some advantages to seller financing. Number 8, and I'm gonna say to Debbie, you know, Deborah, how did you arrive at your price? Now, gang, before you answer that question, look at me for a minute. Look at my facial expressions. Deborah, how did you arrive at your price?
Just based on what some of the houses in the neighborhood have been selling for?
Okay, now listen, on the guts gauge, gang, that question is about a 3, okay? You could actually make it a 4 if you said it like this by making a face. How did you arrive at your price? I mean,
Did you already ask her that?
No, no,
You
no.
haven't asked her that yet.
No, so he's,
So you're jumping 1, 2 to get to that?
Well, no, because you had in that first conversation on the phone, right?
Oh, you're
first
jumping
conversation on the phone, I asked, what do you think your home is worth? And she said to me, well, I don't know, you tell me, and I said, well, what do you think homes in your market area? Listen, by the way, when you say that, 99% of the people tell you what they think their home is worth. At that point in the conversation, you've been on the phone with them already for 10, 15 minutes, they do and they will tell you what they think their home is worth. Yes?
What I run into is, well, when you ask them, what do you think your home's worth? I get the response, well, I'd like to get,
Sure.
okay?
Okay.
And if you think that's out of whack, you follow up with,
Gasp then.
okay,
Yeah.
I hear what you'd like to get, but what do you think your home's worth? Or
You
do you
could
just leave
say,
it at that?
you could say any number of things, because, you know, I heard what you're saying you'd like to get that amount, but how much do you think you'd actually get? You could back it, kind of back it up with that, because I don't really even know whether I haven't done my market analysis yet, I don't know whether that's out of whack or not, I have no idea at this point for most properties, so I haven't seen the house yet, right? So I would actually ask them, what do you actually think the property would sell for? I know that you'd like to get this amount, but what do you think it will actually sell for? And they may say, well, I think it'll sell for what I'd like to get. They may say, I'll actually probably end up getting less. Well, how much less, And that's how you work around it. What are your major concerns in making a move?
The inconvenience of it all, I think.
Okay. Well, how do you mean? Have you had a bad past experience before or something?
I just hate packing. I don't wanna
Packing?
pack. Yeah, hate to
Kind of-
pack.
Kind of tough.
A lot
right?
of work,
Yeah.
yeah.
Have you ever considered hiring a mover to do that? Cause I know some moving companies will actually do the packing for you.
Really, a moving company, never heard of a moving company.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that might be an option,
Yeah.
depends, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
we're pretty tight, so we wanna see, you know, where we end up with, you know, what we sell the house for and whether or not we can afford to hire a mover.
Okay, I can appreciate that. If you like, later on, I can potentially refer you to a few people that I know that are in the moving business that our company's had good luck with, and,
That would be
you know, you can
great.
certainly interview them for the job of, you know, of helping you pack up and do those types of things, or whether you decide to do it on your own, so.
That'd be great. Do you make money on that referral, John?
No,
or
no, not at all.
No, just curious.
Nope, not at all. The
Oh,
only
yeah,
way-
goodwill.
the
My
only way that-
brother owns a company.
Yeah,
Just goodwill.
I'll be over my jeans.
Yeah.
Part of my premier
In my
service.
pickup.
what is,
Part of my premier service.
what is the most important to you? Pricing, timing, or convenience?
What would I say, what would I say? I would say that, I probably would say that.
What?
They're all really important. If I had to pick one, I guess if you were asking me that question and you were in fact an agent.
Yes.
And I were a seller, I'd probably say price. I think most people would probably say price.
Pricing, okay.
Pricing,
So I-
John, pricing is the answer.
So we have to go back to,
30 days.
so basically, you wanna hire an agent who can get you the highest price, right?
Right,
See what I'm doing? Basically, you need to hire an agent who's gonna get you the highest price, right? Gerald, this is what I'm doing. You need to hire an agent who's gonna get you the highest price, right? Right? Alright. Okay.
What was that, timing, pricing, and what was the other?
Convenience.
Oh,
Convenience.
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 Okay.
Now, Deborah, let me ask you this, what would it do to your plans if you couldn't sell your home?
nothing, I mean, we don't have a job move or anything, we just wanted to move to a different part of town, so it wouldn't be astronomical, we would have to stay, that's all,
You would stay?
yeah.
Okay, alright, that's good to know. And so it's not really a major concern, like you earlier you mentioned that you really wanted to move, but
I know,
if
I'm
you
all over the
couldn't-
map with this, aren't I?
Well, it's okay,
You know,
I
price is
understand.
most
Some
important,
people
what I
have-
want out in
She
30
didn't
days,
have to.
you know?
That's what you said originally.
What's that?
So, she said she didn't have to go.
It is typical, that's
Well,
absolutely
that's
Sometimes they
does
say
happen.
that,
What they want.
sometimes they say that even though they really do want to move, right? I mean, listen, I was kinda joking around a little bit earlier when I said, why am I here? I mean, but think about it, you're there for a reason, gang.
Right.
And what they're trying to do is they're trying to hide information to you from you because they don't want you to use that information against them.
right.
So what they wanted to know is they wanna know that you really care about them first before they'll open up. And you have to do that by using a sincere tone of voice, by really giving them a sincere compliment when you first walk in the door, dressing professionally when you get to the house, having all your forms and your listing books prepared and everything looks good, it looks like you're organized, okay? Having all your ducks in a row, right? So that, part of that will lead to the trust factor as well, that you're a professional.
Yeah.
Yes,
One of the things that you said about being all over the place and your stories changing as you're going through, when I went back to school for my master's, one of the things I started in the counseling, I got out of it because it was a little too touchy-feely for me on that. But one of the things that they said is, when you first start with someone, what they tell you is rarely the truth, but the more open-ended questions you ask, and the
Right.
more layers you peel away,
Right.
the more you get to where they're actually
Right.
at.
And I don't think it's dishonesty, I think it's just, geez, I hadn't really explored that, I hadn't really thought that much about that yet. And so you're asking me these questions actually helps me to narrow down my focus.
absolutely. So what might a seller say when I ask the question, what would it do to your plans if you couldn't sell? Give me some examples of what a seller might say.
What would it do to my plans if I couldn't sell? Well, that means that we would have to continue to watch the neighborhood deteriorate, that would bother us.
Okay.
What do my plans? I mean, some sellers might say, can't take advantage of, presuming it's a good market, can't take advantage of this market, which we really wanted to be able to do that, so. It could be as serious as, well, that's gonna be a real problem because then we can't relocate for this job move, this, job change
Right.
that's coming up.
So what you're saying is that, if we don't get you moved, you're gonna lose money. Right.
I see where you're going with that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be lose money, it could be, I could see if we don't get you moved, you're gonna be away from, your family's gonna be separate, so your husband already has the job in South Carolina, you're living in Massachusetts, and so if the property doesn't get sold, you're going to be, a family apart, basically.
Yeah.
Am I right?
So you look for whatever they're saying as an opportunity to say why you should be listing the house is where you're going.
Yeah, well, I want them to also know why, what will happen if you don't sell the property. And I wanna know, if they say nothing, I could care less if this property sells or not, I'm just going to stay living here. Well, I know it, at least I know what I'm dealing with.
Right.
And I still might list and sell the property, but at least I know what I'm dealing with, if they have no motivation or not. I mean, the key is just getting to the motivation. And as I mentioned, the questions are getting more and more gutsy as we go, right? And then I asked this one, what would it take for you to list with me today?
See, I'm trying to speak from a seller's perspective instead of an agent's. Well, will you do it for 4%?
That's a great question. You know what, I haven't seen the house yet. I mean, if I get up and look around here, it's a real dump, I might have to charge you 10. So you might, depending on your personality, you might make a joke out of it. Just smile and say, geez, I haven't even showed you what you're gonna net in your pocket yet, why don't we get to that part first? See, I try to put it off as much as I can,
Yeah.
because we're not talking about price yet, we're talking about questions yet. And, let's do this, Deborah. We'll talk about price in terms of net and commission and all that good stuff after I get up and take a look around the house.
Okay.
Remember go back to the 5-step process, remember? Stay on track. Stay on track. See, an average agent would say, well, okay, yeah, if I can list it at 4, I'll have to go back and ask my manager, and oh my God, let me try to get on the phone right now, and oh my God, I'm freaking out, and all of a sudden, you have to take on this attitude that I'm not even sure I want this listing.
Right.
You really want to work for someone who only wants to pay you 4. See, the reason why they're only asking you for 4 is you haven't sat back down at the table after, you might even say this to them, so listen, before we talk about commission, we need to do this. I need to get up and take a look at the house first. Then we need to go back to the kitchen table and talk about why so many people hire me and my company. And then after I show you that, you tell me how much you think I'm worth. How's that? And if you still think I'm worth 4%, then I'm probably not the agent for you. Right? With a smile.
Yeah.
Wow, that's powerful. Right? That's confident. Listen, they don't want to hire a wimp to sell the largest investment of their life. That is not attractive to them, okay? So they want someone who's confident, that believes in themselves, and believes in their company, and believes in their purpose and what they're doing, believes in the value that they're bringing to the table. See, the problem with some agents, if you don't have that value right now, you need to look at your marketing plan. You need to look at what are you actually showing them and telling them and selling them about you and your company. And if it's not compelling enough, you need to get a new presentation. By the way, gang, everything you need is available for you. Everything you need is right at the tip of your fingers. It's all available in your office, on the websites. Here's where it's not available for some agents, right here, right? It's not available here. See, it has to come from within your heart first. You have more potential than you could ever possibly imagine. You have the ability to knock the cover off the ball every time you go on that listing appointment and make the decision as to whether you want the listing or not. You can shape your own destiny. You have the skills, you have the ability, you have the confidence. It's just that for some of us, it's trapped inside, and you have to let it out. You have to let it out and let it just come to the surface, and then physically use it, and then share it with people.
Is that a class that you're gonna be doing?
I'm doing it every day.
Are we in therapy now?
Yeah, we're doing it every day. We're talking about it every day. Yes, Bill?
In one of our conversations addressing that same point, you mentioned something about a dialogue that, well, if you go for 4%, you're negotiating my fee, and if I cave in to that, how hard am I gonna fight for you when I'm negotiating the sale of your house?
Yeah, that's
Yes.
a good answer, I
Yep.
think, yeah.
But I'll be honest with you, the best answer is to not answer it at all at that point. That's the best answer. If you notice, I didn't handle her objection. Because you know what? it's silly. It's like the silliest thing that we should even be talking about right now. That has nothing to do with anything right now.
Actually, at that time, it might be a good time to say, boy, if you don't think that I'm worth 7% by the time I'm done with this presentation, maybe we can go back and address that.
Yeah,
That puts 7% in their head instead of the 4%.
Yeah.
Suddenly
it
six
gives
sounds
you a-
good, that,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then 6 sounds good, right? And you know, and by the way, you know, you're on step 4, I'm still on step 1, right? That's step 4. We will talk about that, not a problem.
I just want to share too, I used Jose's example of that barber shop.
Yes?
I don't know if you recall that one.
What's that?
Anybody, was anybody here the day that show? About the father and son were in the hair cutting business, and the guy across the street, well, they charge $15 for a haircut. Guy across the street puts up a new building sign, says we do $5 haircuts. The son goes to the old man, says, Dad, how are we gonna compete against all this? You know, for $5 haircuts, they're gonna put us out of business. And the old man put a smile on his face and said, we're gonna put a sign out front saying, we fix $5 haircuts. And that's what
good.
we do, and that worked.
That's a great story.
And that got me a 6% commission.
You told that story and it got you a 6% commission?
Yeah, and it started at 4.
That's great.
You
Was it an
serious?
expired property?
No.
No?
Yeah.
But it
Write
worked.
that down.
It worked. Actually, I panicked, and all I could remember was his story.
Yeah.
It
Well,
worked.
it worked.
That worked.
Yeah.
Did you get 1%? Are you getting 1% out of that?
We're still in negotiation.
That's great.
At least
Thank you for
copy
sharing
it.
that, that's great, I love that, that's great. You know what, gang, we're going somewhere with this. This is a process, okay? And you've all been great, you've all been, you know, I can tell because you're finishing the sentences that I'm saying, you know, and you're paying attention and you're using this out in the field. Some of you are reporting back to me and saying all the successes that you're having as a result of using these techniques and implement them and making things happen for yourself. Remember, there are 2 things, you know, it's the knowledge and the education. And, you know, they say knowledge is power, right? And I disagree with that. Applied knowledge is power. You follow me? It's one thing to get the knowledge, it's a second thing to apply it, okay? Some people that are in this business right now, they're not doing either one. So I want to applaud you for coming here today because I think you're awesome, so thanks for being here, I appreciate it. Why don't you
Thank
help
you.
me applaud yourself? Okay, gang, any questions?
Yeah, I still would like to see that chart that you have with everybody's,
Yes.
yeah, I'd like to really see
Okay.
that, so we could make our own or hone in on it and
Comparison flow
compare,
chart.
yeah, that
Okay.
comparison flow chart,
Good.
I'd
We'll
like to
get
see
you
that.
that. Excellent, yes.
Just one question about pricing.
Yes.
Sometimes people have already interviewed someone else and they started with an unrealistic idea of the price of their home.
Yes.
And they've already gotten an agent from somewhere else, agree with them that that's an okay price.
Sure.
And you come along and say, don't
Right.
think that's quite right. How do you compete with that agent that will let them put any price on it just to get the listing?
It's very simple. When I get to the property, I would say, well, show me the market analysis that agent used. And in most cases, they won't even have one. It's an opinion. They're not basing the sale of their investment on any facts. So they're just kind of winging it. And, you know, I've learned that the worst thing that a seller could do is to just wing it on their price and just try it at a higher price, because ultimately, that leads to you being frustrated, not getting your property sold, and ultimately netting less money in your pocket by pricing it too high. So the best thing you want to do is make your decision based on facts, not opinions. And I brought some facts with me today. I have 3 properties that have sold in this area, and they're all similar to the style of your property. And what I did is I put a sticky note on every one of these, on the prices of all the properties. And so I'm going to show you the first one, and we're going to compare this house to your house. Now, you think your house is worth $400,000, right? And the agent said your house is worth $400,000. Well, here's another property that has an additional garage, and it's a little bigger. What do you think this home sold for? And they're going to say what?
$375.
No, they're going to say more, because it's bigger.
Oh,
It's a bigger house
Yeah.
in there, so they're going to say more than 4, aren't they? Say, okay, peel the sticker off. And they peel it off and it says $375. And they go, oh, well, let's put this one, let's use another one. $380. Oh, let's use another one, right? And that one's $370. So you see, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we have to convince a few different people about the value of your property. Number one is the buyer, number two are the agents in the marketplace, and the third and most important is the appraiser from the lender. And they're gonna use this exact same, these three comps, the buyer broker is gonna use it, the buyer's going to use it, and the appraiser are going to use these three comps. And even if someone falls off the Mass Pike, off the turnip truck, or going up down Mass Pike, and rolls into town and wants to buy your property, and says, I'll pay $400,000 for it, the bank will not lend them the money to buy your property, therefore forcing you as the seller to sell for fair market value. So the point is that you never want to hire an agent based on price. You want to hire an agent because an agent who is what I call buying your listing, they just want to list your property just for the sake of having a listing. And quite honestly, as I mentioned before, that's only going to lead to disappointing you and frustrating you and not getting your property sold and getting you that much further away from your net and what you want to put in your pocket. Believe me, I work on a percentage of the sale price. Doesn't it make sense that if I thought I could get you more, that I would do it? You have to ask yourself, why would I be willing to walk away from listing your property if that weren't true, right? I mean, I get paid on 100% commission. I don't get a salary for coming out here and talking to you today. So if I can't get the property sold and earn a brokerage fee for doing that, and you're not gonna get your home sold either, it's really, I only wanna work with people where it can be a win-win situation. And quite honestly, I think if you go down that road with that other agent, I think you're only doomed for failure. So basically, the choice you have to make now is, before you decide which realtor you're gonna choose, does it even make sense to sell your home? In other words, if you're only gonna sell your home for $375, can you live with the net? And if you can't, then don't sell your home. Don't put it on the market with me, don't put it on the market with them. But if you can, and it's gonna hurt a little bit, but you do have to get the property sold, then I hope you'll at least hire me because, and I hope you're not mad at me because I told you the truth. In fact, I think starting off a business relationship with a lie is probably the worst way to start it off. And unfortunately, other agents just didn't have the guts to tell you what you needed to hear, and I did. And I hope you respect and appreciate that. And I promise that we can continue this type of dialogue and relationship as we work together. Does that sound good?
Where can I sign? Give me the.
I know, we could just morph into you for our listing appointment.
Like a Star Spangled Banner.
Okay, all of it.
Why don't we give you the leads and you go
Yeah.
out?
And you give us a cut.
I know, yeah, thank you. I mean, you know what, Lauren just said I had to start somewhere, you know, gang, you all have that potential to be able to say those types of things at any given point. You have to care in your heart, and you have to expose yourself to the words often enough so that they do become second nature. And if you do that, you'll be awesome. You all have the potential to do it. Just keep exposing yourself to the training, implementing it. Listen, the first time you go out there, it's not always gonna work right off, right? But you try it, it works. A little bit every day you get further and further, so
Maybe
again.
visualizing those conversations, you know, in your mind maybe?
Yeah.
Really, seriously, just kind of imagining them
You know,
when
the
you're not
biggest-
under the pressure.
Absolutely, what Deborah's saying is very accurate. And then, you know what else, is the biggest time that you get yourselves in trouble as agents is when you're going in there feeling like you have to get the listing. And you don't. You don't have to get that buyer. And in fact, you're better off, you know, you've heard the saying that Floyd always says, you know, having, worse than having no listings is having listings that don't sell. Oh, and by the way, before you take off, look at the next page here. Real quick, gang. Sales partners, do you have listings that are not selling? Come to the seminar and watch your listings sell faster and for more money. Successful pricing techniques. Listen, all that stuff I shared with you right now and any listings that you have right now, remember what I said earlier in the seminar today. No, all the marketing in the world is not gonna sell an overpriced listing. Many of you are doing, oh, I can't get this listing sold, will you guys help me sell it? Well, actually, you have to help yourself. Get the seller to make an adjustment in the price. I've got a listing, I can't get it sold. I'm gonna do another open house for the 1700th time this month, right? I'm gonna put more ads out there. It's not gonna sell, so you need to get it reduced, but you have to be able to have a conversation with the seller to get them to wanna come down in the price. So I wrote, ever meet a seller that thought their home was worth more than it really is? Of course, they're all out there. Attend Friday and walk away with 3 powerful techniques that will have your seller begging you to price it right. Remember, there's only one reason a property doesn't sell. Show up and learn more so you can earn more. And then on the last page, I know some of you have to blast out right now, but if you do get a chance to fill this out and fax it to me or mail it to me, or if you can fill it out now and leave it on your chair, that'd be great. I'm looking for some comments about what you think about today's session, what you thought about previous sessions, because I want to use these testimonials to get other people who haven't been to these sessions yet, to get them to show up. Remember, the more activity breeds activity, so the more people we get here, the more fun we can have, and the more interesting it'll be, and the more people will be on the same page as you.
I'll email it, John, I do have to blast.
Perfect,
Thank you very,
Deborah.
very much.
Thank you very much for today, appreciate it. And the other thing is, I might potentially use these items when I'm in my recruiting presentations. You know, I'm practicing what I'm preaching. I'm asking you to use your testimonials from your sellers on your listing presentations. When on my recruiting presentations, I want to be able to have some facts and some information about what you truly think and feel about these training sessions. That if, what is an agent actually missing and losing out on by not coming to these types of events? You know, you want to motivate someone, always tell them what they're going to lose rather than what they're going to gain. So if you could do that, that'd be great too. Again, thanks for everything, appreciate it. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Great.
John, one
I'm just gonna shut the video.
Take time, really, just.
I didn't get it.